Now, I will disclose before further moving forward that I contacted Representative Matt Getz from Florida. And if I believe correctly, the first time was the autumn of 2019. I contacted him because I understood that action that had been taken against him in the state of Florida by the court was connected to an act of cyber terrorism that occurred in the state of Texas. And I contacted him directly at that time because I had information. I contacted him as soon as I obtained that information. I received several responses from his office, including ones that were highly inappropriate in regards to the context under which I contacted him, and ceased and desisted efforts to try to contact him in the spring of 2020 prior to the announcement of COVID 19. I understand at this time there was an attempt to engage him in a legal proceeding with accusations that he was responsible for acts of trafficking, including sex trafficking. Please be mindful that before I contacted him, I had also, in the state of Texas, attempted to seek redress for acts of trafficking involving not only myself, but myself as connected to and through a woman representing herself pro se that had two minor children that were being trafficked for pension fraud and Medicare fraud that had national security implications. So the accusations of trafficking directly targeting Representative Getz were preceded by a formal litigious process both within the state of Texas as well as on the federal level connected to accusations of trafficking. Specifically, a conspiracy connected to a criminal drug enterprise being effectuated through various federal agencies, including through the Health and Human Services, connected to distribution of dangerous drugs. I understand that what's going on with Representative Getz is an attempt to acquire a form of insurance for others, including members of the opposition political party. But appearances of factional disputes do not negate that there is a consistent criminal enterprise. As I argue, it's actually the appearances of these disputes that actually helps facilitate this organized crime. It's not to say that people from different perspectives or different political affiliations might have a justifiable cause of action against people from an opposition party, including if that party is engaging in concerted efforts to defame or to retaliate against them, specifically for their political perspectives and political opposition. This is not something that's just about Democrats and Republicans, mind you. As a matter of fact, the Republican Party of Texas is implicated in doing that very thing to the Libertarian Party of Texas concerning the last election cycle. But I contend that the Democratic Party did that to members of the Green Party during the 2008 political cycle. I say that as a disclosure because the formal charges that should be considered today have to do with things that were in effect at the time that the Commission on Biotechnology, Biomedicine, Nanotechnology, and Bioengineering was in effect in Texas. As a matter of fact, I believe that it went into effect, formal effect, 2005. From the 2005 to 2006 edition of the Texas Criminal and Traffic Law Manual, Chapter 20A, Trafficking of Persons. Section 20A.01 definitions. In this chapter, forced labor or services means labor or services that are performed or provided by another person and obtained through an actor's A. Threatening to cause bodily injury to another. B. Restraining another in a manner described by section 20.011 or C. Withholding from another the person's I. Government records, II, identifying information, or III, personal property. 2. Traffic means to transport another person or to entice, recruit, harbor, provide, or otherwise obtain another person for transport by deception, coercion, or force. Legislation H Stats 20378 Legislator Session Chapter 641, effective September 1st, 2003. As soon as 2003, which would be prior to the effectuation of the Governor's Commission, Texas was already on the books with laws regarding trafficking. Is this another example including in connection with or consistent with examples that have been provided more recently of playing some sort of counterparty hedging strategy? Will the governor be able to get away with a secret commission that gives him exclusive access to, through his role in the state police functions, expropriating the personal private property of people, spying on people, and putting them into context included through the use of or the threat of use of interrogation techniques or directed energy weapons so that they can be trafficked for the illicit gain of not only the governor, but those that have co-conspired with the governor, including those availed of research and development associated with the expropriation of that person's property. Section 20A.02, Trafficking of Persons. A person commits an offense if the person knowingly traffics another person with the intent that the trafficked person engage in 1. Forced labor or services, or 2. Conduct that constitutes an offense under Chapter 23. What's Chapter 23? I'm sorry, 43. Chapter 43. What's Chapter 43? Public indecency. Prostitution, 43.02. Promotion of prostitution, 43.03. Aggravated promotion of prostitution, 43.04. Compelling prostitution, 43.05. Accomplice witness, testimony and immunity, section 43.06. Subchapter B, obscenity. Definitions, section 43.21. Obscene display or distribution, section 43.22. Obscenity, section 42.23. Sale, distribution, or display of harmful material to a minor, section 43.24. Sexual performance by a child, section 43.25. Employment harmful to children, section 43.251. Possession or promotion of child pornography, section 43.26. Duty to report, section 43.27. Now, this is right here in the official manual. This was the law at the time. This law was in effect prior to mandated certification by every member of law enforcement in the state of Texas that they receive training on how to address acts of human trafficking, which means every single law enforcement entity that is availed of the benefits of any bond instrument, including a municipal bond or general obligation bond, or through relationship, including in connection with access to police facilities, an ISD bond. Every single police officer, every single law enforcement officer in the state of Texas is liable for being in violation of the law on many accounts through refusing to address appropriately acts of trafficking. Acts of trafficking do not just include prostitution. They do not just include prostitution of a minor. If you allow for people to be defamed through a slanderous misrepresentation of their likeness or image, engaged in acts of pornography, including child pornography or violent pornography or racist or racialized pornography, that qualifies as obscenity. If you force them to be remanded to nothing more than accessing public services and or prevent them from accessing public services, including public services engaged in bonding via facilities and fixed assets for which bonds have been issued, for refusing to engage in crime up to and including acts of prostitution, then you are implicated in trafficking. The truth of the matter is, by the letter of the law, it does not matter, really, what you use the benefits of those acts of trafficking for. There is no legitimate purpose for trafficking people. There's no law enforcement protection for trafficking people. There's no national security protection for trafficking people, even if you try to masquerade it as intelligence or counterintelligence. It's against the law. If you beat somebody, either through physical force or through some other form of force, so badly they're forced to receive medical treatment, and then you lie about what the medical condition is, and then you compel them or force them to perform labor or services, including in connection with the development of research and development features associated with product lines for any purpose, be it medical or weapons development, you're still trafficking somebody. Even if you torture somebody and put them under such extreme physical pain, or even if you threaten them or their family or their communities with violence or death, that's still no excuse for trafficking somebody. It's still illegal. And even if under duress, you try to force them to sign a contract waiving their rights or engaging them in some form of binding arbitration so you can continue to torment them, that contract is not legally binding. You cannot force somebody to sign a contract to commit to a criminal conspiracy. You know why? Because that becomes a contract to commit to a criminal conspiracy. And that contract becomes the contract to commit that's going to get you indicted and shut down. Every single contract. It's not a derivative agreement that you get to trade on the futures market. It is a contract to commit to a criminal conspiracy. Every single one of them. If I have to, I will argue in court. There is no contract that is more binding than the Constitution of the United States of America.